Welcome to the Nexus Point. We are Rich Romero and Jeff Bruskin, and this is the podcast for next generation accounting firms. Welcome back to the Nexus Point Podcast. As always, my name is Rich, and we're here with managing partner and CEO Jeff Bruskin. How you doing today?
I'm doing great. Excited for what we're going to talk about. How about you, Rich?
Same. I'm doing well too, and I'm excited for what we're going to talk about. And on that, we're going to be tackling, the conundrum, maybe we'll call it, or the interest and the buzziness of out of the box tax software. Plug and play solutions. One off the top of my head is April. And then there's another one through wealth.com that focuses more kind of like on the estate planning side of things too. And there's a lot of curiosity around the tools and like maybe are they the future of hassle-free, tax work and things like that. What are some of the hidden complexities that people like need to think about? And so we're just going to kind of explore the nuances of all that and kind of what makes them really interesting and maybe, what really you need to think about just in case you're potentially wanting to use them. So my first question here is kind of just what sparked the rise of the out-of-the-box tax softwares like April and wealth.com, and just like why are people so curious about all of this stuff? We talk a lot about AI-driven stuff. We talk a lot about tech, but this is kind of a very new thing. So I want to hear your thoughts and opinions on that too.
Yeah, thanks for the question. So I think, wealth management firms, and we talk about this a lot at White Tiger, have a lot to lose by not integrating tax into their service stack. Historically, the wealth management firms wanted to work with CPA firms because it was a great place to cross-sell their wealth services into financial advisory, financial planning, insurance services, things like that. More recently, buying an accounting firm, building an accounting firm, partnering with an accounting firm, using one of these out-of-the-box tax softwares, all kind of the same thing, right? It's that, the wealth firms that we work with, Rich, they want to see that their clients are getting the integrated service themselves. So it's less about, hey, I want tax clients to sell my services to. No, it's I want my clients to have an integrated tax experience themselves. So this is the newer dynamic, and yet it's not easy to solve for this. Building it through hiring is risky and ROI, risky. And, if we're hiring someone for a $200,000 salary to come in and be our founding senior tax manager and work with our clients and things like that. Well, there's no cash flow that's coming with that person. We have to build it from ground zero. And we might not know anything about running a CPA firm and the malpractice insurance and the compliance risks. And so there's a lot of unknowns around that. And so there's a lot of appetite around buying accounting firms. But if you buy an accounting firm, what are the chances, that it's going to be totally turnkey? And they're not high, spoiler alert, right? They're going to be struggling with talent problems themselves, workflow problems themselves. And so it's attractive in concept to buy an accounting firm, but private equity is super voracious in buying up the firms that kind of don't have a lot of issues. There's not many of them to begin with. And so what's on the market, what you might have access to most of the time is going to be because there's a key person retiring. And so you've got to replace their capacity, certainly before you can provide that capacity to your clients, which again is a lot of the reason that we're seeing in the market, what's driving the appetite around the integration of the tax service. And then you could partner, but partnerships are very commonly a lot of smoke and no fire, where, you might have a great lunch meeting with a CPA who says, yeah, send me your clients who need service, and I might send you some referrals too. And then the CPA drops the ball during tax season, doesn't respond to your clients. You end up looking silly, and it actually hurts the relationship even more than the duress it was already under, where the client is looking to you to be the quarterback. Look, we see this stuff all the time, right? And so April and Wealth and many others in the space have come up with, sort of products, SaaS products, almost turnkey products to which they're marketing. We can do your taxes, your client's taxes on a done for you basis, on a flat rate, blah, blah, blah. And I think that, yeah, so this is what's driven the rise of it. And happy to go into more depth with additional questions.
Yeah, for sure. And like, I'm interested because I mean, like a lot of people file their taxes on like TurboTax and there's other sort of platforms like that too. Is that more kind of like what these new softwares are trying to do, just better? Or at like a high level, can you just maybe, through your own research and maybe talking with several people in your network and in the profession, like how they might work like under the hood, like what are they actually trying to do for, your clients and your business and your firm?
So we definitely have to distinguish, and I probably should have done this before. Like what kind of client are we talking about? Is it a retail client, 150 to $400,000 AGI? Is it a mass affluent client, 400,000 to $700,000 AGI? Is it an affluent client, 700,000 to $1.2 million AGI? Is it a high net worth client, $1 million to 5 million AGI, or is it, a client that it, measures their net worth in with 9 figures? Yeah. So the category of client, between retail, mass affluent, high net worth, ultra high net worth obviously matters when we have this conversation. I'm going to give an ultra high net worth client, an AI tax solution, right? But for a retail client, you might give them an AI tax solution. And so I think that's just a really important distinction. And then ultimately, yes, it is like the lower end clients. They're using the HR blocks, the turbo taxes. And so I think a lot of the question mark actually arises for the RIAs and the broker dealers, Rich, who are serving the mass affluent, the affluent, and the high net worth client, because the ultra high net worth client and the retail client are a little easier to solve for. It's that middle category where there's not corollary, CPA firms that specialize in servicing those clients that have abundant capacity where the price point is reasonable. That's the thing that everyone is scratching their head about. And these out of the box tax solutions are trying to provide an augmented service, maybe eventually a complete service. But then you get into the tax planning and, where does the compliance end and the planning begin? This is an interesting question.
Yeah, yeah, and I appreciate you kind of going into that a little bit because all of those different layers and levels, of wealth, they need specific things, and we did another episode kind of on that topic as well. Another big question, and I think you're gonna like this one because it's a theme of ours, just when we talk about relationships and things like that. Just like for the users, and by user I mean like the firm side of it, if they're looking to kind of bring this on and use some of this software, what are some of the nuance, like the limitations of these things, and speaking about the relationship and what that means just in terms of the client to their advisor, like how, like what, where does this hold you back, and like, and why is it something that you maybe like wouldn't advise on somebody using, or things like that?
Yeah. So I think, look, technology is getting better and better. It will be able to automate a lot of the tax profession, a lot of the accounting profession. My crystal ball gets, a lot of people say their crystal ball, Rich, gets fuzzy after like the next 3 to 5 years. I think mine goes to like 10. I think that no matter how good the technology gets, people are still going to want people to advise them. You can do your research in a garage, in your bedroom, at your office about any topic. And with Claude, and as of the recording of this podcast on 3/17/2026, Claude is the latest and greatest, right? And next month it might be Gemini, and the month after that it might be Grok, and then Chat GPT might be back on the map. Who knows what's going to happen with AI? But it is getting really good, really fast. It is not going to be able to automate the relationship, not at the macro level. It will be able to automate aspects of the relationship, but at least until a generation comes into the primary wealth holding category, where that generation has grown up with interacting with AI. Even, I'm a millennial, even many Gen Z, I believe, will still look for a human who can use that technology to be the one who is really helping to quarterback, right, their life. And whatever the topic at hand is, be it therapy, be it interior design, right, be it certainly their financial future, and something as major as their legacy. And so I do believe that the limitation really is on the relationship side. People want to, a soul wants to connect with another soul, wants to, intuitively feel someone's expertise and the depth of that, and are willing to pay for that, right? How can that, I think that's a lot of the shift that needs to happen, even in the labor force over the next X number of years. Is AI is completely going to eradicate jobs and service the expectations of individuals when it is the task. But when it is the program on the back of a relationship, on the back of something which requires that trust, I think it's going to take a generation before we really see kind of the existential threat of anything advisory oriented as a result of AI.
Yeah, and I appreciate that insight there. And the last thing I just kind of want to wrap on is like, as we continually talk about AI, we continually talk about tech, and like, do you see like truly a place for these kind of like really high end level SaaS softwares and things like that in any of the type of firms that we talk about? Like, I know we have to kind of like really be delicate about balancing the people side of it and the tech side of it. But do you see a path going forward as it gets better where you can really use these new ones like April, like wealth.com in a firm and really be like successful with it?
Yeah, I do think that you can. I get nervous, Rich, about over investing in these tools. I strongly suggest you start with a sample size. Don't connect, the lifeblood of your firm and the lifeblood of the client expectation to a tool, just like you wouldn't with a human, right? You would do it physically, and that's probably intuitive for most business owners. But just test it incrementally. These tools are going to continue to get better, just like the CPA firms out there are going to get better through AI. So are the third party out of the box software is going to have their technology and their operating processes get better and better and better, as long as they don't over leverage and go upside down and get zombied, like is happening so much in private equity. And we saw with bench accounting and so many others. It doesn't mean they can't go out of business. So I do think there's a place, especially in the retail sector, for this kind of a solution, but it is not the only answer. And I would argue, we believe that there is a better answer, which is to buy and build in-house, where you control the locus of delivery, and the relationship and the actual work, the compliance itself, can interlock with one another. So that's our preference. But at the end of the day, you ask me as an advisor to the space, is it viable? Yeah, it's totally viable in the right place.
Yeah, and I think like with everything, like as much as tech has over generations has gotten better, it also comes with its, its pain sometimes, and it doesn't always work perfectly, and you never want to run into those issues as well. And just like kind of diminish the client experience and all of that. But that wraps it up for me on our kind of like dive into the out of box softwares and things like that. I hope we covered enough of the curiosity. I hope we covered enough of the nuance and things like that. But as always, we appreciate you all tuning in, and we're always open to, fielding more questions. Reach out to us at any point, and we're always happy to continue talking through things. Anything else left for today, Jeff?
No, thanks for your time.
Yep. Appreciate it. Thank you for watching the Nexus Point. See you next time.